very pleased to have with us in studio tonight another individual who is out in St. Louis, Katie Pavlich, the author of the brand new book, Fast and Furious. Barack Obama's bloodiest scandal and its shameless cover-up. Katie, thank you for coming in studio this evening.
Thanks for having me, as always.
You bet. First of all, how did the NRA annual meeting treat you?
It was great. It was great. I learned a lot, saw a lot. It's always a mind blower how big you know how big the industry is, but you really get a physical presence of it once you get onto the convention floor. And I really like the idea of the education that's there. I know the NRA has always been very they've held education training as an important priority for them, and it showed. There were seminars on everything from concealed carry to how to dress your game, so it was great.
Well, cool. I'm glad that you had it, and you know you had a book signing out there. Hope that it went well for you.
Yeah, it was a steady trickle of people. So
nice.
People seemed a little, that they wanted to see the book. So that made me happy.
Well, the book is getting a lot of attention this week for, among other reasons. I think the assertion that Janet Napolitano perjured herself in her testimony to Congress. So let's delve into that. What are we talking about here? What did she say that contradicts the facts?
Well, she under oath in front of Congress has said that she didn't know about Fast and Furious while it was going on, and that she has never spoken to Attorney General Eric Holder about the program, either before or after Brian Terry's murder. Now, here's the problem. 2 of her agents have been killed as a result of guns walking. Jaime Zapata from guns that were walked out of Texas, which is a little bit of a different program. And then you have Brian Terry, who was killed by cartel members using guns that were provided through Operation Fast and Furious. Everyone knows that part. But my sources in the books, 2 of them, 2 separate sources say, look, she absolutely knew about this. She's lucky if she doesn't go to jail. Every ATF report that was filed with the ATF headquarters and DOJ about Fast and Furious, a mirrored report was filed with Homeland Security headquarters as well. Now, one thing that I do in this book that no one else has really done yet is really break down the complicated web of who these people are. We've heard DOJ, Homeland Security, White House been thrown around a lot.
Right.
But who are these people? I mean, who are the people who are really responsible for this? And we go back to, and we talked about this multiple times on your show, former U.S. Attorney for Arizona, Dennis Burke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only did he serve as Janet Napolitano's staffer while she was the state attorney for Arizona, he served as her chief of staff all of her years as governor of Arizona, followed her into the White House as her senior Homeland Security advisor for a year, before President Obama appointed him to head up the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona. Now, President Obama knows that personnel is policy, and there's a reason why he's stacked everyone in his administration full of anti-Second Amendment viewpoints. Dennis Burke just so happened to be from Chicago, drafted the assault weapons ban of the Clinton era with Rahm Emanuel, who, of course, served as Barack Obama's chief of staff in the White House.
Right.
So how does this connect to Eric Holder, right? Janet Napolitano claims, despite that huge connection with Dennis Burke, him being a friend, working with him for 10 years, that she wasn't in the loop at all. And how does this connect to Eric Holder? Well, while he was U.S. Attorney of Arizona, Dennis Burke also served on Eric Holder's Attorney General's advisory board, giving him direct advice, advising him on gun trafficking policies and border security policy.
Really?
At the same time.
Okay. So with all of that, the idea that Janet Napolitano would never have discussed, frankly, something that she should have discussed within her capacity as head of DHS.
Right.
Again, we keep coming back to this odd choice for the administration. Either their cabinet level officials are so bad at doing their job that they're not even talking to their top lieutenants about things like murdered agents, or they're not telling the truth when they're testifying to Congress.
Right, and you go back to, look, the president, Eric Holder, and Napolitano have said, if we knew this was going on, we would be outraged. Well, you know now. You claim you didn't know. You know now for sure. And you're still not acting outraged. Now, the idea that Janet Napolitano wasn't questioning Eric Holder, questioning his department about why were you running guns into Mexico when I have Border Patrol agents who are working that area of the country night and day coming
Right.
against these cartel members who have zero respect for human life, zero respect for U.S. law enforcement. Why would you do that? But she's not asking those questions. And she's definitely not doing it publicly. And you have to go back to the beginning of the Obama administration, which I talk about a lot too. And in early 2009, President Obama gave Eric Holder direct orders to reassess what their gun trafficking policies were, to reassess what their border policies were. They made it a top priority to stop guns flowing into Mexico.
This is when they held a big press conference talking about their new initiatives, and they were going to be sending more resources down to the border, right?
Right, and Janet Napolitano was right on board. And so when you have the president, Eric Holder and Janet Napolitano, saying they had no idea when this was a top priority under direct orders from the president, that just goes to show another pushback and another cover-up and another lie. If it was a top priority, why didn't you know about this?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. What a tangled web they weave, you know?
Very.
I mean, again, we've talked about this for over a year. It really does take a book to lay it out and to connect all of the dots here and say, okay, because this is a big scandal. I mean, this isn't like, it's not like the GSA scandal where you can sum it up as, you know, okay, guys spend a lot of your tax dollars throwing big parties in Las Vegas. You know, we can sum it up as the Obama administration put thousands of guns in the hands of Mexican drug cartel members that led to the deaths of hundreds of individuals, both in Mexico and here in the United States. But the backstory is complicated. And frankly, Katie, you know, given the fact that there are some 64,000 documents that are still being withheld by the Justice Department, how much of this story do you feel like you're able to tell? Do you think that there are parts of this story that we don't know yet?
Oh, absolutely. This is just the beginning. The bottom line is this administration at the highest levels, from the day that Brian Terry was killed. You know, people forget that this cover-up didn't start once the very few handful of media got a hold of the story. This cover-up started the night Brian Terry was killed. Emails were flying, December 15th, less than 24 hours after his murder,
Right.
about the guns being connected to Fast and Furious, not to mention Eric Holder's closest staffers, Monty Wilkinson, knew the guns were connected to a government gun running program the same day, and it was informed of Brian Terry's death that, just hours after he was murdered. Those emails started flying right away. The cover-up started immediately. They knew they were in trouble. Jaime Avila, the guy who bought the guns that the ATF allowed to buy these guns in January 2010, nearly a year before December,
Right.
when he was killed, they arrested him the same exact day Brian Terry was killed, because they knew that the guns connected to this gun running program, this Fast and Furious program. And so they arrested him in order to say, look, we're doing our job. We're arresting people. We're doing our job and holding people accountable, when the entire time they were the ones responsible for it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you look at the fact that on a couple of occasions, one of the guys that ended up being indicted for running these guns was in custody, and we let him go on more than one occasion.
Right.
I don't think that that's been fully explained by the Justice Department or anybody at ATF, has it?
No, it hasn't. And look, you go back into asking these whistleblowers and asking anyone in law enforcement, and none of the techniques that they used, letting guns walk, no law enforcement agent that you'll talk to who's on the ground dealing with hard criminals will tell you that, of course, we let guns walk. It's a tactic we use all the time. They don't let that happen because people get killed. And in this case, they let 2,500 guns walk. And the idea that they've sold this as, and I think a lot of the reason why it's not, so-called gaining enough traction, is they've sold it as just another government program that went wrong. People made mistakes. No, it wasn't botched. It's not, 2,500 guns didn't somehow end up in the hands of the wrong people. The whistleblowers will tell you that nothing will drive them more crazy than people calling this a mistake. They were mandated to allow these guys to buy these guns.
Right.
They were mandated not to interdict the weapons. They were mandated to let them go to Mexico. This wasn't a mistake. They did this on purpose.
So what do you make of the assertion we saw yesterday, David Voth's attorney and Bill Newell's attorney, now trying to throw this back on DOJ and say, well, it was them. They told us that we couldn't arrest these guys. It wasn't coming from us. It was coming from DOJ.
Oh, so they've changed their story a little bit, because at first they were saying it was just a few low-level agents who went rogue, like John Dodson, who
Right.
was, of course, one of the whistleblowers who gave up everything. He was the first one to come out publicly on this program. It's turning into this finger-pointing game of non-responsibility, which goes back into why President Obama, like Ronald Reagan did with the Iran-Contra scandal, needs to come out and say, I'm condemning this program. I'm condemning the people involved. I want to know who's responsible, and if criminal charges need to be filed, those people should be held responsible for their criminal actions. But what is he doing? He's standing by his attorney general with full faith and confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, it goes back to something we talked about earlier in the program. We've already seen someone fired in the Secret Service scandal. 3 supervisors have been suspended. When the administration wants to act quickly,
They can.
sure seems like they can. It's been over a year since the Inspector General started looking into Fast and Furious. Nobody's been fired.
Right. Well, this is the problem, is once you start firing people, they can start talking. So if you keep them on the payroll, that you can still retaliate against them, can still threaten them. And we, document extensively the kind of retaliation these guys have received for speaking out against this program, for being against it from the beginning, yet their managers with their shiny badges and their fancy shoes, told them that if they're going to speak out and not get in line, that they can go work at the Maricopa County Jail or,
Right.
or find a new job. And so, not firing anyone is just another method of the cover-up. This is a way for them to keep people quiet while threatening them and saying, your career will be ruined if you say anything about this program.
I mean, when you look at what happened to John Dodson, I mean, he's been reassigned. It really wasn't given a choice. This wasn't like his normal time had come to transfer. This was a demotion, right, to a much smaller
Right.
Field office. Having some trouble paying rent because Phoenix's housing market is not
Terrible,
good. So
right.
here's a guy who tried to do the right thing, and in response, the federal government is basically trying to bankrupt him.
Right, exactly. Just like they tried to bankrupt the gun dealers by, regulating them and blaming them for, suing them and allowing them to, allowing foreign countries through the UN to sue them for, acts in other countries that are committed with guns lawfully in the United States. I mean, this all goes back to connections within the Justice Department, the Obama administration. And quite frankly, you go back to the beginning of the Obama administration with this 90% figure, which you've covered extensively.
Right.
After that press conference that President Obama held with Mexican President Felipe Calderon in April 2009, Mexican president flew to New York City and got a big fancy lawyer he could use to start suing gun shops in America for crimes committed in Mexico with the so-called guns that were coming from those shops. And so this all goes back to, they were blaming the gun shops in the first place, when that was proven false, that these guns in Mexico weren't coming from them. Mom and pop stores weren't coming from them, or guns weren't coming from these mom and pop stores. They had to prove their case in order to get their anti-Second Amendment policies through. Because, as you know, support for new gun control measures are at an all-time low in this country. There's no way it would have gone through Congress. And whether it's this issue or other issues, this is the way the Obama administration operates.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the, I think it kind of gets lost here, but the Obama administration has gone after these FFLs, and yet it's important to note that in Fast and Furious, they weren't investigating the FFLs.
Right.
The FFLs were actually cooperating with these individuals, with ATF. They thought, and they were being told by the ATF, that they were doing the right thing and that they were helping out.
Right.
Which tells me that the FFLs in the area had a good working relationship, or so they thought, with local law enforcement. And they were certainly acting on the up and up, or else they wouldn't have been so eager to help.
Well, and also, it's a conflict of interest for ATF to ask these gun dealers to sell to these straw purchasers, because ATF controls whether they stay in business by issuing them their license. If ATF wants to, they can find some little piece of paperwork that wasn't filed correctly or something else and say, dangling their license in front of them, saying, you really don't want to help us with this government program? You see your livelihood, how you pay, you pay the bills and how you put food on your table with this license here. We can take that away. And there's a sense of intimidation that if you're not working with ATF, there's consequences for that. And going back to what you just said, look, At the same time, and I talked about this too, then people don't realize. Remember that Washington Post article that came out, the secret
Life of
Secret
Guns.
Life of
Yes.
Guns. Well, guess who's quoted in that story? December 15, 2010, coincidentally the same day Brian Terry was murdered. Bill Newell, former special agent in charge of the Phoenix office. Fast and Furious was in full swing by now, right? They were telling J&G Sales, Lone Wolf Trading Company, Scottsdale Gun Club to sell these guns to these straw purchasers. They're ending up in Mexico. ATF leaked their trace data to the Washington Post. Guess where these guns were ending, where they were showing? J&G Sales, Scottsdale Gun Club, Lone Wolf Trading Company, and Bill Newell, the guy, full approval of gun walking, denies it now, as you just mentioned.
Right.
Slams these gun shops who are working with ATF and says,
working with ATF.
well, if someone comes in and wants to buy 20 AK-47s and all they have to say is that they're Christmas presents, so let them sell.
Right.
When months later, these gun shops had emailed Dave Voth and said, look, we don't like this. What are you doing? You know, are you sure you're interdicting these weapons? This is not comfortable for us. It's not normal that these guys are buying so many weapons. And it goes back to the idea that these gun dealers don't need the government telling them who's suspicious and who isn't. You know, they're good people. They have no interest in selling to the cartels, especially when the cartels aren't coming to America to pay $600 a piece for these AK-47s and 50 caliber rifles that can get them other places. And they smear these people, these citizens, for doing things that they would never do in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Katie, again, I appreciate you coming in studio. The brand new book is out now, Fast and Furious, Barack Obama's Bloodiest Scandal and the Shameless Cover-Up. You can find it online at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and your local bookstores. Have you walked past a big display of this yet?
Not a big one, but I saw it at the store. So
very cool.
Yeah. So
all right, well,
spread the word. That's what we got to do.
Absolutely. It was number 13 on Amazon.com, beating out Rachel Maddow yesterday. Let's see if we can get it up in the top 10, knock off one of the Hunger Games books, and get this on the bestseller list. Katie, thanks again, and have a great night.